As we approach the August 1st tariff deadline, President Trump has announced a new trade deal with the Philippines and details of an agreement with Indonesia. The trade agreement with Indonesia was first announced last week. It includes a 19% tariff on imports from the Southeast Asian nation. However, U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer notes that goods that are transshipped or contain a lot of content from highly tariffed countries will face a 40% tariff. In exchange, Indonesia will drop its tariff to zero for more than 99% of its U.S. trade. Trump also announced a trade deal with the Philippines following his meeting with President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. at the White House. He says that the agreement includes a 19% tariff that will be charged on goods imported from the Philippines. American products being shipped there will allegedly face no tariffs. Officials from the Philippines, however, have not yet confirmed this agreement. CBS News MoneyWatch correspondent Kelly O'Grady joins us now. There's a lot of numbers there. The 19 seems kind of random. So explain to us the complexities of this deal. And also just doing some reading, I didn't realize that 28 billion in goods come in from Philippines. I mean, think of these countries as sort of, or is it Indonesia? Yes,
I think it was
Indonesia.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the complexities involved here. And what this means for the United States.
Right. So I think it means different things for consumers and for businesses. So for consumers, if you are buying goods that a company has imported from Indonesia, it's going to be subject to that 19% import tax that you mentioned. So it would follow that maybe prices would go up, probably not by that full 19%, but how much a company would pass on to you and me. Mm-hmm. For American businesses, though, this was really sort of the details of this deal. It is becoming easier to sell their products into Indonesia. You mentioned that over 99% of goods, of U.S. goods that are sold to Indonesia will have no tariff. Mm-hmm. So that's really important if you're working in the agriculture industry and you haven't had access to that market. I will also note, I've got the White House's announcement pulled up here, strengthening rules of origin. So making sure that the product that is being shipped here is actually produced in Indonesia versus coming from a place like China. That was that point that you made around
40%, where you could actually get a higher tariff.
Exactly.
Okay.
And another thing would be removing barriers around digital services, so companies that are making digital revenue not being taxed. And I thought this was interesting, improving labor standards in Indonesia for how those products are produced. So I think a lot of good for American businesses as well as the standard of products we get from Indonesia.
And this time always goes by so quickly, but if you could explain too, what is this signal in terms of the timing, that Philippines deal, and also where do we stand with China? Because they have till August 12th. Unlike that August 1st deadline that we keep talking about.
Right. So on the Philippines front, they are not a top 10 producer for us. I think what this really signals is the Philippines, we are an important partner for them. Right. They wanted to get a deal done where that tariff was going to be lower. For China, there's so much back and forth here. Yes, there is that August 12th deadline, but there's so many complexities to be worked out when it comes to chips, to the tariff rate. And we also know even when you have a framework of a deal, things tend to change very quickly. It took over a couple years last time to get a deal done.
Wow. So we'll see what happens. I feel like we say that on just about every story.
Yes.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens.
Kelly O'Grady, thank you so much.